I started collecting coins with my dad. He was in the stamp business and had branched out into the banknote business and coin business in the early 1950s, late 1940s, and it was just natural. I was the oldest child of three and three boys, and we would go to work with him every Saturday, and we're surrounded by coins and stamps and banknotes, and it was just natural to want to collect them. And I grew up in the business and would do the attribution on world coins and banknotes after school and on the weekends, and stamps as well. And I went off to college. I went to Gettysburg College in Pennsylvania. I got my BA in history. I was naturally interested in history and the social sciences because of growing up in the business. And I met my wife there, and we fell in love, I told her someday I was going to go back and rejoin the family business, and it came a little bit sooner than she had imagined, and so I dragged her up to New Hampshire with the first thing that struck her was, where are the sidewalks? But we have three lovely daughters and 6 grandchildren, and it was a great place to grow up and grow with the business. And my 2 brothers joined me, and we were working with my dad, and my dad was very good at giving us a lot of room to make mistakes and didn't interfere. So we had a lot of fun in the field. Naturally, being in a family business, there were some disagreements from time to time, and over the years we had to resolve all that. But we were fortunate to make it. We're 74 years in business continuously, and I sold the business a couple years ago to our employees. But I fortunately am continuing to be president. In January of 2020, I'll become the chairman of the board. Well, I think it's still fun to go to the bank and pull out some coins and bring them home and see what you can find. I do that with my grandchildren, and I've had some success with them. I didn't do as well with my daughters, which is why I sold the business. But the grandchildren are having fun. So the other thing is, obviously, I think most collectors start with the influence of a relative, and probably not a father or mother. It's usually an uncle or an aunt, or friends of the family who've been traveling and brought back coins and banknotes to give you. And that's my oldest grandchild. That's how he got interested. Some friends of his parents brought home some paper money from their world travels, and when I showed up at his house, he said, "Grandpa, look what I've got." So I had to get him an album and get him started organizing. So I've branched out and started to give them, our name Sundman is a Swedish name, and my great-grandfather came over from Sweden in 1880, and I've been giving the kids old Swedish coins that might have, he in theory might have handled, prior to 1880 and earlier. And so there's a family way you can go as well with heritage. So I started out collecting world coins. And part of that is because they were available to me. My dad started out with world coins and banknotes, and they were very inexpensive. And so here's my first attempt at an album and doing it in an organized way. I actually collect old albums now. This one was made by Megrig, which is a New York company, and it's really neat. So world coins are very affordable, and for a small amount of money you can get great variety and have a lot of fun. I've been doing this with my grandchildren, helping them attribute coins as to the country, and it teaches them a lot, just to recognize the different languages. It's a lot of fun, and of course they can go on the internet and they could type in the inscription on the coin, and up would pop some information on it. So this is a wonderful, inexpensive way to start. Probably a lot of mistakes. My father actually started in business. He started in business in Littleton in 1945, but he had a stamp business that he was operating as soon as he got out of high school in 1935, and he ran it out of my grandfather's and grandmother's living room, and he had 6 employees, and some days he couldn't make the payroll, and his father was a successful salesman and would meet him on the back steps and slip him some money so he could make the weekly payroll. He enlisted in the Army before the war, and then got out just before December 1941, and as soon as Pearl Harbor happened, he knew he was going right back. He had to shut down his business, so he went to the draft board and got a couple months so he could shut it down in an orderly way. And then he went to North Africa and was in the 5th Army and went to Italy. And while he was over there, my grandfather took inventory and wrote my dad a letter and said, "I have some bad news." He said, "The inventory is not what we thought it was." So all that time, like 6 years, my father had been losing money. And that was sobering and actually depressing. And when he got back out of the Army, he had one backer, H.E. Harris, who was the world's largest stamp dealer. And H.E. would give him a credit against his inventory, and he told H.E. that he didn't think he could make it. And he said, "Well, analyze your expenses, and you probably need more margin." And so he did. So he had this great failure, which he later turned into a success by careful analysis. And today we have wonderful records. We record all our advertisements and attribute all our sales to where a customer originated. And we know what's working and what isn't. And so you have to learn by mistakes. The key thing to our success is, obviously, we're pleasing collectors, but we have a wonderful staff. We are in a small town of 6,000 people. We have 275 full-time employees in an 85,000 square foot building, and we're shipping 5,000 orders a day. But the key, real key, is our staff is just wonderful. Well, the key thing is to satisfy customers and listen to them and please them. And we're very good at delivering a conservatively graded coin or banknote, and we're going to continue doing that. We try to do it when you place an order. We fulfill the order within 2 days, but we're going to hopefully get down to 1 day, which would be really great. So we'll just keep plugging away and improving. We're selling coins on our website, also in catalogs and price lists, and on approval. And we're the largest on approval dealer in the country, and one of the largest in the world. And so we're sending our product, our inventory, out in the mail to our customers for them to carefully look at on their own time and pick what they want and return the rest to us with payment. And we're taking a reasonable risk with our customers, and it's repaid. They have trusted us to help them build their collection, and we've been doing that successfully for 74 years. Well, I think it's important. I mean, you want to draw younger collectors, but younger collectors could be 50 years old. So to me, being new to the hobby, obviously you're going to be using different language and have different products to appeal to different age levels. But when you're starting out with new collectors, you've got to make it easy and safe for them to do business. And we try to do that by being very consistent in how we grade the coins and banknotes. And we try to create a clear path, give people checklists, give them information how to collect coins and how to look at a coin or a banknote and really know what you're looking at. And for example, with copper coins, color is really critical. And it's the most reactive metal there is. So when you're looking at old large cents or even older Lincoln cents, you really have to be very analytical in how you look at the coin and not get all excited because it's a date you need. You got to take a deep breath and step back and say, well, what kind of quality is this? Does it match the other coins that I have in my collection that I really like the best? And because in the end, I mean, the best copper collection, you're going to be looking at color as well as quality, grade. Well, I expect the hobby to continue to grow. We're currently going through a rough spot, but I think the hobby will grow. We just don't know exactly how it's going to grow, but it will. People really love coins and banknotes, and I think it's there's something that's very physical about the hobby. If you put a coin or a banknote in somebody's hand, all of a sudden they're off on a journey back in time or traveling around the world, and they haven't ever left their living room. So it's just a great hobby. One of the things I collect today is U.S. medals, and they're extremely historic and scarce, and there are fewer people that you're competing against. And one of the most historic medals I find is this George Washington 1790. It's called Manly, after the guy who sold it. These were selling for $2 each in 1790. And on the back of the coin, it says, General of the American Army, 1775, resigned 1783, President of the United States, 1789. And this was being sold a year later. And on the front, which another interesting thing is that it says born, it's got his birth date, February 11th, 1732. And that's because they were on the old calendar. And in Europe, in the Catholic countries, they were on the new calendar. So we eventually converted to that, and they had to add days to the calendar. So we celebrate February 22nd as Washington's birthday, not February 11th, so 11 days later. And on the front it says George Washington, born Virginia. This medal also inspired some tokens, which actually circulated as cents in the early U.S. This came out in 1792, and it's a Washington-born Virginia cent token. It's got the same inscriptions. I had found one of these when I was about 10 years old, and in a mix of tokens that my dad had bought from a New York dealer. And I recognized the portrait because it's illustrated in the Red Book. At the time, this was a $75 Red Book value. Today, years later, when I could afford to get a nice one, I bought this one. This is more than $10,000. But I had this imprint in my mind of this coin, and you just have this desire to own a nice one. So when I had the money, I bought it. I may not have told my wife, but we own it. In 1950, this coin was actually designed by Jacob Perkins of Newburyport, Massachusetts. In 1959, the Perkins family sold the die. They kept it all those years from 1792, and they sold it to a gentleman who did some restrikes, and I believe his name was Albert Collis. And these were done in 1959, and he made 5,019 copper examples. It's uniface, so it's a restrike, but it's blank on the back. And the original die is now in the, I think it's in the A&A collection. It's either that or the A&S. It might be the A&S collection in New York. But the die exists still. So this is just kind of fun, and how I kind of got excited about George Washington tokens and medals.